Well, hello and welcome to the Ramon Foster Show, brought to you as always by the Get Go Cafe and Market, where they're open for business 24/7, serving hot, fresh food. And Mon, quite the bombshell today. Stephon Tuitt announces his retirement from the National Football League after 8 seasons, citing, of course, the death of his brother, as well as the completion of his courses at Notre Dame and just moving on to a different point in his life. What's your first thought here?
Life is more important than ball. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Death is hard for a lot of people. People process it differently. And then when you hit those points in your life, sometimes too, it kind of puts everything into perspective as far as what's important to you, life. You know, that's one of the things I've always kind of talked about with people, like, since my mom passed abruptly at 49 years old, right before camp started, the one thing I've really taken hold on to is the acknowledgement of time. Like I have almost like anxiety for time, you know, with stuff like I hate for people to, you know, miss certain stuff, or I hate to be late, or I hate to be waiting in a holding pattern and stuff like that, because I'm trying to maximize as much time as I can. And I think it's kind of led to all the things that we've kind of said when it comes to Tuitt, though. You know, it's the idea that he's still processing. You know, a lot of this is one of those things where you couldn't rush him. You had to let him work it out on his own. And for him to come to this point right now, I think it's just a pivot on, you know, what's for him moving forward. I don't know if I knew this was a direct option, you know, as far as that goes, but I know Tuitt's not a guy to just be a hanger on to just collect the check and try to say, well, you can put me on the not the exempt list, but you can put me on the whatever list so that I can collect the check or just go through the motion. He's told you, the wild Mustang is the way we kind of called him and played him. And if his spirit wasn't in it, this was probably the best thing for him. And I'll be honest with you, it's the best thing for the team too. You know, there's no sense in trying to force it or push this to happen, as far as him being a guy that's trying to make it work for the pressures of his teammates. Hey, we need you. Or the coaches, hey, when are you coming back? He made a life decision right here. And for him to consider this before 30 years old, it had to have been the best scenario he's ever painted in his mind for what's the next step in his life.
And that's the way he certainly characterized it in his written statement, referring to, you know, the future and of moving forward in his life. Looking at it from the team standpoint, Mon, which I'm sure, you know, I mean, and that's not a cold thing. We've been over the Tuitt situation, the tragedy with his brother many times, and I feel like for the most part, the public has been respectful of that. I mean, not everybody, obviously. You're always going to have a handful of people that are weird.
Just play ball. Yeah, those guys.
Yeah, get over it. But I feel very strongly that the team handled it correctly and with class in giving him the space that he needed to make the decision that was right for him. And as you point out, also ends up being the right one for the team, because they can't impose that decision on him.
No. He clearly went through something and transitioned into just a different person. You know, he was in the building, tried to refresh himself to try to say, okay, let me jump back into the focus. We've seen those reports, right?
Oh, let me jump reports. All his stuff was in his stall. Just yesterday, Mon, Cam Hayward told us yesterday that he expects to see Stephon Tuitt playing. Not expects like I demand, but just that's actually what he was anticipating. That's what all of the defensive linemen were, and they were in constant communication with him.
So for a guy like Cam to not be in on it, you know what I'm saying?
Think about that. Cam.
Yeah. He wasn't in on it. That ought to let you know just where he was, and he's probably still processing it. And Tuitt's a very cerebral guy, too. It's not like this is just a run of the mill. Yeah, he's a thinker, man, and we've had conversations before, and just not just about football, but about life, about business, about family structure.
Those are the best conversations with him, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. You know this, so
I know I've had many of them.
for nobody in that room clearly to have known about it, it had to have just been it's best for him first and foremost. But I don't think we can stress this enough. You don't want a guy going through the motions. You don't want a guy just hanging on just because he feel like you need him to.
Well, let's talk about it from the team standpoint here, because that's where it comes down to. The Steelers will save, according to our producer, Eddie Provident, $9,048,560 in cap space. That is a lot of cap space that's sitting there. That is with the Stephon Tuitt retirement coming after June 1. And not to get into all the NFL labor stuff, we can bore everyone to tears why June 1 is relevant. The team will have a dead money charge of $4.75 million. Bottom line is they have a lot of cap space with which they can address this situation on the defensive line. Moan, what's the state of the defensive line without him?
Man, it's a hustle one. It's next guy up. You know, I hate to use that old cliche, next man up, but it is. I mean, just in general, the Davis brothers, you know, who's going to step up? Montravius Adams, who's going to step up?
Montravius Adams.
You got to look at the young guy, Leal, you know, that they just drafted. Like, you got to be in the fold.
How about Chris Wormley? Not just when he's facing Baltimore either, when he gets all motivated.
No, this isn't that.
All 17 games.
And, you know, Tyson, you know, having the ability to come back too, I think it's more pressure on guys like himself, like to lead this younger group that has become now. Henry Mondeau is another guy that you got to say, well, who's going to provide these reps that's missing? Now, I know he was missing last year too, but I think we was hinging this year on the fact that Tua was going to come back. I spoke about it, like expecting to see him being back, and we've had those deeper discussions about what he can mean for this defense and how it's going to look with him and TJ and all those sorts of things. So the guy that I would have loved to have seen him in that position recently just got signed away to Tampa Bay, Akeem Hicks. You know, bigger veteran guy. He commanded a nice paycheck from Tampa also. So there's the money that it could have gone to. It's not many other guys out there as I try to look at the list of available guys that's left. Sue and Ndamukong Suh. I know he's the attitude, he's the body type of him, but I can't put a finger on it as far as a veteran, considering you have this amount of cap space available. Sheldon Richardson is another guy. I can't put a finger on it except to say, look inside that room. Y'all understand the challenges of the man we expected to be here. He's no longer here in this room, respectfully, for his own personal reasons. So, Leal, Adams brothers, Loudermilk, Henry Mondeau.
You can't forget Isaiah Loudermilk. Yeah, that's another one. I'm not sure about Henry. I mean, Henry is what he is.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that he was available and on roster.
With Loudermilk, you're looking at a guy who's a really good potential run stopper in the National Football League, and maybe there's a way that you alternate with guys who are good at that versus guys who are better at getting to the quarterback, which, by the way, is Leal's specialty out of Texas A&M.
Yep.
He's a lot more of that than he is run stopper. So, let's put it this way. Purely from the perspective of the team and nothing but, it is not a great day for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
No,
it's just not.
It's not. And just the guy that Tuitt is, a laugher. He's one of us as the O-line. He's always silly, giggling, man. I enjoyed him as my teammate. It almost sounds like a damn eulogy in a sense, with him going away.
Either. Yeah.
But it's a young guy like himself retiring before 30 when you know there's so much there. For the people that saying, well, dang it, he should be here, or you put the team. No, this ain't that. You've lost somebody close to you, just had something traumatic, or just honestly have that switch in your head. Just, I'm not going to do this. You rather that for a guy like himself than, just hanging on. And it's been rough for him in a sense. The injuries that always kind of come up a little bit. You got to think about it. Not finishing most of the season he's been there, the rehab to get back, the mindset that you got to have. And in the trenches, there's no playoff, So I'm sure that weighed heavy on him too. His body might feel better after that year that he just had off because of this. So it takes a lot to do this sport.
Yeah.
And specifically within the trenches. I know the quarterbacks have the mind and, the receivers got to have the athletics, but there are 0 plays off for the guys that play between the ball. A yard between the ball is 0 plays off. And I know that's got to play a factor in it for them also. Best wishes. I'll hit him up on the side too. And, it's job well done is all I can tell him.
When we come back on the Ramon Foster Show, let's talk about Terrell Edmunds. Welcome back to the Ramon Foster Show, and welcome back to the Steelers fold to Terrell Edmunds. Not sure a lot of us thought that was going to happen. I'm not sure he thought it was going to happen when he went and cleaned off his Twitter bio of any references to the Steelers. But the market cratered on him, as he acknowledged this week at OTAs, and he ended up with $2.5 million on a one-year prove-it kind of deal. Yeah. He says he's going to go out there and prove it. He insists that he's the starter over Demonte Casey, and I don't know, Moan, what do you think?
Man, Terrell is, I guess the word is polarizing. I guess this is the word you can kind of, not
curiously
bad.
So. Curiously so.
You got a few.
He's a good player.
Yeah, and he is. Let me tell you his issue. I think for me, he's a product of being a first rounder.
Yep.
You know, he's a product of being a first rounder and the expectation. And if we're being real with each other too, he's a product of watching Minkah Fitzpatrick come in and dominate the way he did, although the position and skill set is a little bit different between the both of them. I think both of them playing together is more productive than not as far as the Steelers go. As far as working with this defense, he's gradually gotten better, in my honest opinion, and how he's played the game. The safety position is a position also that's sort of like is devalued. You don't necessarily need two anymore. You need one good one and a guy that can go inside the box. Terrell has kind of proven himself that as of late, especially last year, and I go to 2020 season too, he was able to go in the box and stop the run and be more physical. You look at his size, man, he's 6'1", 220. If we're being real.
Speaking of wiry, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
He's legit wiry.
He's legit wiry, but you'd almost say to yourself, well, he's got to find a way to kind of exploit those attributes that he was naturally born with and work with. You walk past him, you say, damn, this dude a linebacker? Like you can kind of put him in that nickel linebacker conversation. Could you not?
Yeah, we definitely could.
He's bigger than Devin Bush, isn't he?
Well, he's taller and thicker, or taller and thinner. Yeah,
thinner. But if he put on, if he's 217, put on about 15 pounds, you say, yeah, he's a starting middle linebacker.
He couldn't put 15 pounds on it. If he sat there and ate cheeseburgers for the rest of his life, like tied to a chair, he could not put 15 pounds on.
But you kind of expect him to play like a linebacker at his size and stuff like that.
Nasty, greasy cheeseburgers. It just wouldn't work, Mo.
It wouldn't. But what I'm saying with him, if you see him, you'd be like, okay, he's got to have a natural inkling of being able to be a physical guy. And I thought last year he was able to do that, man. His interceptions, not his thing. It's just not.
He's not going to be the takeaway guy.
So when we talk about,
which I think is what people are waiting on, by the way. That's what I think. It's like every first round pick has to be the next Troy. And it's just, it's not going to happen. He is exactly what he is. And if you go by not just his own numbers, if you go by his numbers in relation to the support that he offers to Minkah Fitzpatrick and in 2021 to that god-awful run defense, that's the way you fairly evaluate this player.
This is where he's at. He's 8 tackles for loss last year. He's got to be able to have an impact on the game in that type of way. His coverage skills, they're where they're supposed to be for a guy his size and plays that position in today's NFL. The receivers are just totally different. The idea that the tight ends are just blocking tight ends, not the case anymore. He's got to get better at that if that's what you're asking him. But I don't think that's what this defense is asking of him. He's got to be a run support guy when necessary. He has to be able to cover the middle of the field, meaning dragging tight ends and stuff like that, and be a sure tackler. But he's a product of being a first rounder who didn't get his fifth-year option picked up. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's solid. Can he be a long-time pro? Yes, he can. Is he going to be an all-pro, Pro Bowl type of guy every year? It's got to be the right situation, and that's what we're looking at when you're mentioning Minkah, when you're mentioning Troy. You know what I'm saying? Even so much so as a guy like Ryan Clark. Like, he's Ryan Clark room is where he's at. You see what I'm saying? And that's a great room to be in if the city can get off his back a little bit.
Yeah, see I like TE. I'll admit a bias here, and seeing him yesterday, and we had a pretty nice talk this week. Just, really, simple stuff, how you doing kind of stuff. And I missed being around him. He's one of my favorite people in there. And I like the fact that after our little conversation, he goes over to his stall, he faces the bank of reporters, and everybody's like, T, what about how you were disrespected and everything else like that? And he said, plain and simple, he goes, as it relates to any potential competition with him and Casey, he just says, I'm the starter. Right. That's my default mode going into OTAs, mini camp, training camp. I'm the starter. Yeah. That's the way I have to think, because the last time we took the field here, I was the starter. Why would I cede that? And I really liked hearing that from him.
And let's not act like $2.5 million is chump change. I mean, in the world of the NFL, it is, but it's still a nice payday for anybody that's going to accept it. And this is the other side of it, too. The pedigree is there, whether it's like his brother or not. His dad, 3rd round draft pick also. His brother, Tremaine, is another 1st round draft pick in the same exact year. And then you had Trey, who's in the NFL also. I'm not saying one correlates to the other. I'm saying at least for mentality-wise from his father, at least from competition-wise with his brothers, he understands the position that he's in. So will I bet against Terrell this year? No, I will not. It's a matter of understanding what he is as a player, and that is a run support, has to be an open field sure tackler, and it has to be able to back up the back end when called upon. Simply that. Now, if he expands beyond that as a player, grows better in coverage, gets 4 interceptions in a year, then we say, oh, okay, well, he's developed more, but I can't give him all pro status, especially when he was drafted, late in the 1st round at safety in this type of NFL.
When we come back, hey, Mon. Welcome back to the Ramon Foster Show. It's time for our Hey Mon segment. And today's entry comes from Matthew Patterson, who says, Hey Mon, I've been thinking of something for a while and I want to hear your thoughts. Let's say Mitch Trubisky is QB1. Who do you think is QB2 versus QB3? And if Pickett is QB3, does he dress for games or do you healthy scratch him? Or is Mason QB3 and do you dress him or not? Or do you dress all 3 QBs? That's a lot of QBs and numbers there, Mon.
You gave up on every situation with no possible out of it either.
No, unless QB4 gets involved.
Ooh, which it could be the case. All right, so if Mitch is 1, who's 2? And if Mason is 2, then does that mean he's a healthy 3 scratch? Whew. All right, so here we go. I think Mitch will be 1, period. I simply do think that. I can always say, can I be wrong? Yeah, of course I'll be wrong. But I got Mitch as 1. 2, it's hinged upon the fact if they decide to keep him. Okay. And it also hinges.
This is it. Yes.
It's on that also. And the other aspect of it, as far as the sports psychology of it, looking into the mental side of if Mitch is number 1 and they do decide to keep Mason, I don't think you can keep Mason 2 and have a bad game by Mitch and not start Mason. Now, on the other side of that is if either one of them don't have good showings or the Steelers are 2-3 and 2-4 to start off the season, the crowd gonna ask for what, DK? They're gonna ask.
I'll pick it. Yeah,
you might as well throw them in. All of this is based upon the fact of how good these guys, and I'll just call them this, these second-time guys are gonna be able to play and perform. It's based upon that, and there's a lot of pressure playing in Pittsburgh, and there's a whole lot of pressure of having a 1st-round draft pick in Kenny Pickett on the bench too. Now, and where this pressure comes from, I don't think it'll necessarily come from inside the building if those 2 guys aren't playing well, because those coaches are going to be the ones that evaluate Kenny. They're going to be the ones that see him more than you probably see him, DK, at practice. They're going to see him way more than we see him. And it comes down to how much he's picking up the game of football. How good is the game of football coming back to Kenny Pickett as far as his ability to make plays? Because this is the thing about it. We're watching a guy now in Miami and Tua Tagovailoa who Ryan Fitzpatrick had to tell him they're not college open anymore. They're NFL open. throw to the spot a whole lot quicker. What does that look like? I told you once before, Coach T will not hold back when it comes down to trial by fire when it comes to the young quarterbacks, right? So if they're going to see anything, he's going to see it in practice as much as anybody. So the pressure of, is he a third quarterback scratch on game day? I'd elect to have him as a scratch to go help out another position at all times, because if you got Mitch, that's one thing. But if you keep Mason Rudolph, that's about as solid as a backup as you can ever get. I'd be shocked.
That's my thing. Go ahead, finish.
Okay, go ahead. If he's not trade value at this point, I love Mason, but we know the business does its thing, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, the trade doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because here's what happens. Here's what happens. The reason, your motivation, if you're the Steelers, not Mason, if you're the Steelers and they control this situation entirely, you have no motivation to trade Mason Rudolph, because you don't need the cap space, because you're not spending very much on the quarterback position as a total to begin with. Secondly, the situation that you really don't want out of this is that Mitch gets hurt, and I mean really hurt, early on.
Elbow,
and then,
whatever.
And then you throw Kenny Pickett into the Wolves, and you end up New Yorking him, basically, meaning everything that the Jets and the Giants do to their quarterbacks to ruin them. Yep. Okay? And you can't have that either. You want to have Kenny Pickett operating at a position of strength. When he does enter the lineup,
right,
it needs to be in where you're certain about what his status is. You know?
Yeah, and
so Mason has value to this team.
And that's where I was, getting at when I said the point of the crowd getting loud if Mitch gets hurt, and then it's Mason's job, or both of them play bad early on. It ain't. And I don't think in this situation, considering you're really trying to find the guy and not have a leap year in which other organizations have, and they can't find the quarterback, I don't think inside of the building they'll buy into it. But of course, at some point in time, if they're playing bad, both of them are, like, you'd almost say, well, we got to put them in. But to your point about Mason being more game ready than Kenny Pickett will be this year, that's a position in which they do have the advantage. Again, I don't think Mason's a salary dump guy at all, meaning they got to dump him to sign Minka or to sign Deontay. They're in a really good spot for the first time in years as far as the cap goes, being able to pay guys. They've never bent the knee in my recent history with the Steelers to putting a guy in before they have to. Maybe if you look at Kendrick a little bit, but there were no other lines
in general. But certainly not at the quarterback position. Wow, what a good question.
Yeah, it was
multi-layered as it was.
So you're going on record, Mason's not getting traded. Also, that's the other part.
I don't think so. Yeah, and I don't think he's going to ask for one either, because what's he going to do? He's either a backup here or he's a backup somewhere else. He's not going somewhere else to start.
It's a start. Carolina, no. Seattle, no.
Not at that late junction. No way. You're either in camp.
You're
right.
You got to know the playbook.
Got to know the playbook. I mean, he is where he is.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Anyway, great question.
It was. That
Want
challenge.
to do another one of these tomorrow, Mo? Want to do another one?
I swear I'm here if you are.
All right. Okay. All right. Let's do that.